Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real G Football. I am alongside my good friend, my good man, Prince Sosa. Sosa, how you doing? How you liking those Bundesliga games? We just finished watching them.
Oof, it's been hot, man. It's hot like here in Ottawa, man. 35 degrees out here. The games were hot. It was a great time.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really good. These games, they were all super influential games. We got to start off with their Klassiker. But before we do that, please make sure to like this video, give it a quick thumbs up, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to Lingo Sports. Thank you so much for doing that, guys. And of course, don't be afraid to get in the comments when we start to reveal some controversial opinions that maybe not everybody's gonna love exactly, just like we did last week, which some may have actually been confirmed, Sosa. So we'll get into that. But let's start off with their Klassiker. First off, I just want to say, look, I know it was just a 1-0 game, but I thought it was an amazing game. I thought it was so much fun. The challenges, the pressing, the tactics, the chances that they had, everything that was going on. It was a really intense game. And I think someone actually tweeted that it was one of those games that just, it didn't feel like there wasn't any fans. Like the intensity was still there. Whereas a few of these, you felt like it was always one side has been really a lot better than the other, but there's really like a competitive edge to this. It was so good. It was one of the better Klassikers there's been in like the last couple of them. Like we mentioned last week, the last 5 Klassikers going into this, Bayern won 4 of them, and they had pretty much dominated all of them except for one in Dortmund. And I think you could also say that, this being in Dortmund, their fans probably would have really helped them here. I think that would have actually really given them a little bit of help. But obviously, there was some key issues with Erling Haaland coming out injured, Sosa.
Yeah, I was actually talking about my dad with that. I was like, when it was like the 80th minute, once Haaland went down with an injury, I was like, damn, you can really tell Dortmund is missing their fans, right? Like, that 12th man they have in Dortmund is fierce. Like, let's be honest. Dortmund is known for this 12th man type of thing, the yellow wall. So, I mean, they did really, really miss them. There was a few controversial moments, right, with the one with Boateng where he fell down and then he takes out the elbow. I thought at least check the VAR on that one, right? Like, if you're not going to call the penalty, at least take a second look at that, right? Like, that's what VAR is for. But, I mean, it was a great game, like you said. There was a lot of heated moments, intense, very well. And Dortmund didn't play that bad. Dortmund actually had a pretty solid game. Like, I remember Haaland in the first 30 seconds, nutmeg Neuer, and then, it was so close, but then it's just they just couldn't find another moment to score and win it.
And that's the tough part about it all, right? It's like, it's just there were some good chances, but the other thing too that was really tough was Dortmund couldn't really hit them on the break, and we talked about that, right? Like last week, is that Dortmund's really good at hitting teams on the break. They're good in possession too, but Bayern, I think they made the great adjustment of like, they weren't letting them get out of their half. They pressed them so well. They cut them off. They kind of stopped them from kind of really exploiting them, because I think they knew that the pace of Dortmund could really get them, especially with Haaland. But what they did was they kind of started to sit back. Eventually, they kind of said, okay, if we can keep them in their own half or their own third even, then we'll do that. But if it starts to look like they're starting to build up, everybody gets back. And Dortmund couldn't really get any clear and easy chances. There wasn't any they didn't have any advantages in terms of numbers in Bayern's area. So I think that's what really, really stuck out to me, and what really helped them is they didn't allow Dortmund to beat them in almost any way. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't competitive. It's just that they didn't really have those great chances that we've seen in other games. And then as well, Alphonso Davies, man. Alphonso Davies looks like the truth. I mean, you said it last week, Sosa. Top 5 left back.
Top 5!
Bro.
Top 5! Bro. I want everyone to know, top 5. He proved it today. I think his speed was like 36 kilometers per hour on one of them, which is like top 10 in Bundesliga history. Like, how do it's just set in. Like, top 10 speed in Bundesliga history. Like, that's unreal and unheard of.
That it's crazy, man. And like literally, like he was racing up and down the pitch. And I'll say this much, in the modern game, the way fullbacks have to be at one end of the pitch to the other, having that speed is really, really crucial. Being able to go back and forth, being able to attack and then get back there and defend. obviously there's tons of players with both those skills, but how you take advantage of that is when a fullback's too high, you catch the other team out. With him, it's so hard to be caught out, and I think that's another guy to kind of help to really kind of neutralize Haaland while he was still in the game. And that was crazy to me, like the couple of times he took the ball from two. The other thing again though is, man, like again, he's not just speed. If he was just speed, he wouldn't be taking the ball off these players, man. Like Dortmund has a group of like skilled players. He's strong, he's fast, he's a good tackler. And man, the challenge that he got the yellow card for was I didn't see anything wrong with that at all. Like he pretty much got all ball. Like yeah, sure, I think it was Dahoud who tripped over him or something. But either way, like that was not really a card-worthy challenge at all. Even a foul-worthy challenge, if I'm being completely honest with you. I thought he looked really, really good. I think he, almost with this game alone, he can kind of like solidify himself as like Bayern's fullback. Like he could really be the guy, especially if Hansi Flick is the guy to take over there for the next season. Everything obviously being normal, hopefully, at that point in time. But man, that was just, it was a crazy, great performance from him. You talked about the Boateng potential handball there, and I think that one was a bit, because if the rule is that whether intentional or not, if it's clear, he had, like, it pretty much hit his elbow, right? Like, if it's intentional or not, you get the handball. I think that's got to be at least reviewed by VAR. And I noticed that there haven't really been too many reviews by VAR so far in the Bundesliga at its return. But then there was another one too with Akanji bodying Robert Lewandowski in the box. I thought that was really bad. I think that was one of the worst challenges of the game that had a lot of rough ones.
Yeah, you can feel the intensity, right? Like those teams were jabbing at each other, but like you said, like that's a clear penalty. Like he fell down and you see Haaland come and then he jumps over and he takes out the elbow, which clearly is a penalty. But then again, there was a penalty on the other side. So, I mean, it kind of canceled out each other, I suppose. So people are not going to be like arguing too much, right? But I think the refs weren't at their best today, and there's no excuses, right? Like there's no fans today saying, like yelling, cheering, booing, whistling, and all this stuff where they usually affect the game in that way, right? Because they peer pressure the refs to do this or to call that, right? There was none of that today. So I think there wasn't any excuses from the refs, and I think they should have done better in my opinion, especially for a game of this magnitude, right? Because this game, in my opinion, really sets of where Bundesliga is going from here on out, right? Because I think from now on, Bayern Munich's clearly the favorites to win the title because they're 6-7 points ahead, and they have 6 games left. And the way that Bayern's been playing lately, I don't see anyone being able to stop them.
Yeah, I don't either. And another challenge just before we get on to the rest of the league, like that Mo Dahoud challenge was 100% a red, right? Like he literally could have broken Kimmich's ankle. That was a really bad challenge.
100%.
That was probably the worst of the game, actually, to be honest. Like, even the elbow, too, that Hummels stuff, man, he got beat up on a few plays, man. That was especially on the set pieces. He was getting battered by his old Bayern teammates, man. That was rough. Like I said, really intense game. The fouls only made it a little bit more interesting. But what makes the whole situation even more interesting, obviously, last week we asked the question of what's the best result for the rest of the league. It definitely was not a Bayern win, and it definitely is not one where the rest of the top teams that had a small chance of maybe, doing something if Bayern start to fall apart. We're talking about Wolfsburg, who did get a win, but then we're talking about Leverkusen, who they beat, who are a little bit higher than them. And then there's Mochengladbach. Those two teams, Gladbach and Leverkusen, they were there. They had a chance. Leverkusen got the draw against Werder Bremen, and then Leverkusen, who was hot coming off of the break, they lose 4-1 to Wolfsburg, who is a tough team fighting for the Champions League spots. But man, no reason to lose 4-1. Like, I'm pretty sure they're dead in the water as far as I'm concerned. In terms of getting the title, it's over.
Yeah, Leverkusen's not getting the title. I mean, honestly, with a loss like that, I mean, you only get one shot on target. Like, come on, yeah, the one shot, what? But honestly, I think Leverkusen from here on out, I don't think they're even gonna fight for a European spot after what happened today, because after losing 4-1, that demoralizes you so hard. And not only that, you're playing at your home field, at a field that you're supposed to know by like the back of your hand, right? Like, you shouldn't be losing 4-1. And I get it that Wolfsburg's a great team and everything, but like you said, there's no excuses, especially if you're fighting for a Champions League spot. It's okay if you lose. Like, if you lose, it happens, right? That's the way football goes. But once you're losing 4-1, that means there's something wrong with the team, right? And there's something not right there.
In this moment in time, like, this is where champions are made, right? And this is why Bayern is probably going to walk away with it. Now, though, I mean, there still is obviously a chance. There's a small chance. The problem is that, like, you have to assume Bayern's going to slip up in order for that to happen. Question is, will that happen? So, Sosa, I think that there is a few games you can look at to them slipping up, because along with Dortmund, they have a pretty tough schedule. So they got Leverkusen, they got Gladbach, they got Freiburg, and they got Wolfsburg on the last day. And this is all in June. So Dusseldorf coming up this weekend. Okay, whatever. They're probably going to get 3 points out of that, no problem. But the rest of the stretch down the way, if they don't at least draw and lose one of those games, like even Leipzig has a very small chance. Leipzig, even if Leipzig won out, they would still only be at least equal on points with them. Even if Bayern lost and drew one of those games, and even losing at this point right now seems crazy to me. If I had to pinpoint one, I would say probably Mochengladbach. What do you think?
I agree. I think Mochengladbach is the team that I think could put up most of a fight with them. But I mean, as well, like, if you lose 4-1, it's like kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like, you either get demoralized or it's gonna hype you up and you're gonna be like, let's go out there and let's prove something to the world. You know what I'm saying? So I think those two games are really crucial for Bayern to win, but it's the same story every year. Bayern doesn't play well at some point of the season. Some other team is leading the league, and then next thing you know, Bayern's on top, and then they end up winning the league. But it's always the same thing. But why? Because they have so much experience, they have that championship pedigree. I mean, if you win, how many straight titles they have won that I've even lost count? I think it's like 8 or 7 at this point. You do that for a reason, right? It's not just some lazy luck. But at the same time, I don't see them losing any other game. I think they're going to win out. They're going to be crowned champions with like 2 weeks left in the season. Because, I mean, even if Dortmund wins 2 games, that means Bayern has to lose 2 games to Taiwan, right, for them to catch up at least. So I don't see that happening. Let's say they lose these 2 games, they're still up by 1 point, right? So I don't really see them losing the league at all. I think the league is set in stone. It's theirs, in my opinion.
I think the only thing that really could do it is maybe Dortmund have a slightly easier schedule, barely easier. But again, you know, like, then the toughest team they're gonna face is Leipzig. I actually don't see them winning that. I think they're probably gonna lose. That one is gonna be at Leipzig. So I think even though there's no crowd, the travel alone can throw teams off, right? You know, it's not as comfortable as it could be. I also just think that Leipzig's such a great team, and they drew with them 3-3 at home when they had the crowd. So what are they going to do without it, right? Everybody knows that Signal Iduna Park has some of the most infamous fans. The ultras are crazy there. So to think that they would get much better against them, you know, without that, and Leipzig looks pretty good, I don't think so, man. I don't think so. I think Leipzig, honestly, is probably the better shout if there was anybody that was going to take it off of them, just because they have such a much easier schedule, and I just think that they're going to beat Dortmund, so they kind of up them in that way. But ultimately, I think it is Bayern's, unfortunately for. I think, in a sense, for the whole of Bundesliga, in some sense, right? I mean, obviously, I think it's important to, you know, your most popular team wins year in and year out, right? Because, like, that does generate a lot of fans. People are going to buy your merchandise, because the more casual people, they don't really care, right? But the people who are, like, you know, the more hardcore football fans like you and me, to get us to tune in, you know, when you've got other stuff going on, like in a normal situation when there's so much other football going on, there's so many more great games and your own team's playing, or even just to get new fans, it's hard to tell people, hey, tune into a league that's had the last 8 titles, like just, you know, every single season has been dominated by Bayern. It's so hard to tell people to come and watch. I think honestly that it wouldn't have to be, it would have to be more than a Leicester situation. In my opinion, it would have to be more than just one time, because then it's going to seem like a fluke, right? It's going to seem like a fluke that they lost their grip on the title. If a few years came in, maybe like, you know, 2 to 3 years where there was some sort of, you know, just some different clubs winning it, then maybe there would be more interest. But I don't know. What about you? Do you agree with that or no?
No, I agree 100%, Jeff. I mean, the Serie A is another one of those examples, right? With Juventus always winning it year after year after year after year, that people are like, I don't want to watch that. Like, we already know what's happening. We already know, like, what's, like, the predictability and all that type of stuff. And that's why leagues like La Liga and the Premier League are higher than these leagues, and they have more credibility than these leagues, because yeah, with La Liga it's only a 3-team horse race, but at least there's 3 teams involved, right? It's not like the Bundesliga where it's just always Bayern Munich winning. And then you got the Premier League right now. Yeah, right now it's just a 2-horse race team. I know you're a Man United fan. I'm sorry to say this to you, but it's really just between the 2 teams that you hate the most, right? Man City and Liverpool, your 2 arch rivals. But at least there's 2 teams that are fighting for it, or there's 3 teams that are fighting for it in these 2 respective leagues. But when a team just wins it over and over and over and over again, fans like us, like you said, are not going to be really interested, because we're like, why watch this when we know what's going to happen? Might as well watch something that's more unpredictable, right? That's why people love the Champions League, right? Because in the Champions League, anything happens. The World Cup, anything happens. Libertadores, anything happens. The Euros, anything happens. That's why we love football, right? Because anything in football can happen. Underdog stories, everything.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, but even then, if you really look at the Champions League, other than Liverpool winning it last year, it's been dominated by, you know, the Spanish teams. It's been dominated by Barca and Madrid. Like the whole 2010s, I guess you would call it, that decade, or this past decade, has been dominated by Barca and Madrid. And even then, even when you look at it as well, you know, Atletico ended up being one of the semifinalists a couple of times along the that there.
Twice.
Yeah, twice, exactly. So there, when you look at that, it makes things look less legitimate, I guess you could say. I mean, if you really look at overall history, it's very clear that it hasn't always been that way. The 2000s were, it was a different team almost every single time, which was nice. I think that's kind of what helped the boom of football around the world, is that there was always a different team. Same with the 90s. The 90s was always different. Not that dominance isn't important. Dominance is important. You do want to see a great team like the Real Madrid team, like the Barca teams, dominate, and like you want to see greatness. That's another aspect of the sport that we obviously have to love. We don't just want to see random stuff all the time, but we just want a little bit of parity. I think we should all still keep tuning in regardless, and I guess it's pretty much down to the month of June. That's when it's going to really start to pick up, and we're going to start to see some intense football. So Sosa, I want to thank you again for coming on with us. We'll be back next week. We'll be recapping what happened on that weekend, but also we'll be doing a little La Liga preview, a little bit more insight into what might happen when La Liga starts up again. It's gonna be interesting to see what good old Barcelona do, how they're gonna look when they come back for sure. All right, baby, we out.